I buried my only son 20 years ago. I stood over that casket, and I watched them lower him into the cold Georgia clay. I remember every detail, the smell of the lilies, the way the preacher's voice cracked when he said dust to dust, the way my knees gave out right there on the grass. Everyone told me I'd never get over it. They were right. I never did. His name was Benjamin, Benny to me. 28 years old when that drunk driver crossed the yellow line on Highway 19. The police said he never felt a thing. I never believed them. For 2 decades I visited that grave every Sunday after church, left fresh flowers, talked to him like he could still hear me, told him about the house getting too quiet, about how his old dog waited by the door for years, about how I kept his bedroom exactly the same. I even paid the cemetery extra to make sure the grass stayed perfect, because a mother who loses her child, she doesn't just lose a son, she loses the future she was supposed to have. Then, last Tuesday night, the phone rang at 3 a.m. You know that sound, the kind that rips you out of sleep like a hand around your throat. The caller ID said restricted. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me answer, a man's voice, calm, professional, familiar in a way that turned my blood to ice. Mrs. Elena Whitlock. Yes, this is Richard Callahan, your estate attorney. Richard retired 15 years ago. I hadn't spoken to him since the reading of my husband's will. I sat up in bed, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd wake the neighbors. Richard, it's 3 in the morning. I know, Ellie, I'm sorry, but I need you to listen very carefully. I heard papers shuffling. Then he said the words I will take to my own grave. Your son is alive, and he just filed papers to claim half of everything you own. I swear the room spun. I dropped the phone, picked it back up with shaking hands. Richard, Benjamin died. I was there. I held his hand in the hospital while they turned off the machines. Ellie, the man sitting across from my desk right now, has Benjamin's birth certificate, his social security card, and scars on his chest exactly where the steering wheel crushed him. He says his name is Benjamin James Whitlock, and he wants what he says you stole from him the night he disappeared. I couldn't breathe. My mouth opened but nothing came out. Richard kept talking, softer now, like he was trying not to scare a wounded animal. He's asking for $8 million, Ellie, half the estate you built after we thought he was gone. He says if you fight him, he'll drag every secret you buried with him straight into open court. I found my voice. Barely, Richard, bring him to the house tomorrow, noon. I want to see my son. I hung up before he could answer, walked straight to Benny's old room, opened the closet I hadn't touched in 20 years. There it was, the box I swore I'd never open again. Inside, the clothes they cut off him in the ER, the watch that stopped at 9:47 p.m., and the letter I never showed a soul, the letter written in Benjamin's handwriting. Dated 3 days before the crash, the one that ended with the words, Mom, if anything ever happens to me, don't trust anyone, especially not you. No. Who, I'm sorry. I sat on his bed until sunrise, holding that letter like it was the last piece of my little boy, because tomorrow, the dead were coming home, and God help me. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hug him or kill him myself. The clock struck noon the next day like a gunshot. I hadn't slept, hadn't changed clothes, still wearing the same robe I'd had on when the phone rang at 3 a.m. I sat in the living room with the curtains half drawn, sunlight cutting across the hardwood like prison bars. Every creak of the old house sounded like footsteps. Richard's Cadillac pulled into the driveway first, then another car behind it, black, tinted windows, rental plates. My stomach turned inside out. Richard stepped out slow, looking 20 years older than the last time I saw him. He adjusted his tie the way nervous men do when they know they're walking into a storm. Then the back door of the rental opened, and he stepped out. My knees almost gave way right there in the doorway. Same height, same broad shoulders, the walk. God help me, even the walk was Benny's. A little hitch on the left side from when he broke his ankle in Heiss. Cool football, but the face was wrong. Older, of course, 20 years older, but harder. Eyes colder than the January dirt I thought I'd buried him in. He stopped 10 feet away and just stared, like he was waiting for me to speak first. I couldn't, my throat closed up like a fist. Richard cleared his throat. Ellie, this is the man who contacted my office yesterday. The stranger tilted his head. Voice came out low, familiar, but sandpaper rough, like he'd smoked 1,000 cigarettes I never knew about. Hello, Mom? That word hit me harder than any fist ever could. I grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. Take off your sunglasses. I managed to whisper. He did, and there they were, Benny's eyes. Pale gray, blue, the exact shade his daddy had, but something behind them was missing, like looking at a house where all the lights are on but nobody's home. I stepped aside. They came in. Richard tried small talk about the weather. Nobody answered. We sat in the same living room where I used to read Benny bedtime stories. Now it felt like a morgue. He put a thick manila envelope on the coffee antisense table. Inside, birth certificate original, not a copy, social security card, hospital bracelet from the night of the crash, even the damn dog tags I gave him when he turned 18. Everything perfect, everything real. Then he leaned forward, elbows on knees, and spoke the sentence that turned my world black. I didn't die that night, Mom. You just wished I had. I felt the blood leave my face. Richard shifted uncomfortably. I found my voice start talking. He smiled, not Benny's smile, something sharp. You remember the fight we had 3 nights before the crash? Of course I did. Worst one we ever had. He wanted to quit his job, move to California, chase some music dream. I told him he was throwing his life away, called him selfish, a disappointment. Words no mother should ever say. He continued, voice steady. After you slammed the door, I went to the bar on Route 9, got drunk, met a man who said he could make problems disappear for a price. He paused. Let it sink in. I paid him everything I had in my savings, $23,000. He gave me a new name, a bus ticket, and instructions to wreck my truck exactly at mile marker 47. Said the coroner was his cousin. Closed casket was part of the deal. Richard's mouth actually fell open. I couldn't move. The plan was simple. He went on, disappear. Let the insurance think I was dead. You'd get the $250,000 policy. I'd start over where nobody knew me. We both win. He laughed. A dry, dead sound, except you never claimed the insurance, Mom. You kept the money in a trust. Let it grow and grow. $8 million now. Compound interest is a beautiful thing. I finally spoke. You let me bury an empty box. You let me cry myself to sleep for 20 years. For money. His eyes narrowed. Not just money, freedom from you. From the perfect little life you tried to lock me in. Richard tried to interrupt. Something about statutes and fraud. I raised my hand. He shut up. I looked my son, my dead son, my alive monster, straight in the eye. You said on the phone you'd drag secrets into court. I leaned in until we were inches apart. Try it. Because the secrets I buried with you that night. We'll send you to prison for the rest of your life. His smile faltered, just for a second, and that's when I knew. He had no idea about the letter in the box upstairs, or the second set of fingerprints the police never tested, or the real reason I never claimed that insurance money. This wasn't over, it was just getting started. He leaned back on my couch like he still belonged there, like 20 years of rotting grief were just a long vacation he'd finally come home from. Richard sat between us like a referee who already knew the fight was fixed. I didn't take my eyes off him. You think you're the only one with scars, Benjamin? My voice came out flat, dead. Let me tell you what really happened the night you died. I stood up slow, walked to the mantel, and took down the framed photo from his 21st birthday. Him grinning with that stupid guitar strap I bought him. I turned the frame around and slid the back off. Tucked inside, yellowed with age, was the original police report I paid a deputy $3,000 to slip me back in 2005. I tossed it onto the coffee table. Read page 4. I said. He didn't move. Read it. Richard picked it up first. His face went the color of ash. He handed it to the stranger wearing my son's face. The stranger's eyes scanned the lines. I watched the smirk die. The report said the body pulled from the wreck had no dental records on file anywhere in the United States. No DNA match to Benjamin James Whitlock. And most importantly, the coroner found a tattoo on the left shoulder blade. A tiny black dahlia flower with the initials L. D. Underneath. My Benny never had a tattoo. He was terrified of needles. I let the silence choke the room. That drunk driver they blamed. I continued, never existed. The truck that hit you was registered to a shell company in Nevada, owned by a man named Leonard Dorsey. Ring any bells, son? His jaw tightened. Good. Leonard Dorsey? I repeated, tasting the name like poison. The man you met at the bar. The man you paid $23,000 to kill someone and put him in your truck. Because you didn't just want to disappear, Benjamin. You wanted me to suffer forever. A mother who lost her only child is the perfect ghost story. Keeps the insurance investigators away, keeps the questions away, keeps me locked in that graveyard every Sunday. Richard finally found his voice. Ellie. Are you saying the body we buried was some poor drifter Leonard picked up? I finished, probably already dead before they torched the truck. Closed casket. No questions. I didn't find out until years later, when the nightmares got so bad I started paying people to dig. The stranger stood up fast, chair scraping the floor. This is insane. You're trying to sit down. He sat. I opened the drawer in the side table and pulled out a second envelope. Inside, crime scene photos I wasn't supposed to have, close-up of that tattoo, close-up of the melted watch that stopped at 9:47, and a lab report dated 2010. DNA from the corpse matched a missing person from Atlanta. Name, Marcus Trey Reynolds. Reported missing 3 days before the accident. Marcus had a sister. She still sends me Christmas cards. I slid the photos across the table. Marcus had a mother too, Benjamin. She's 78 now. Still thinks her boy ran away. How do you think she'll feel when I hand her these? His hands were shaking now. Not much, just enough. I wasn't finished. And the insurance money. I said I never touched it because the minute I filed the claim, they'd run the DNA. I knew the second they did, the whole lie would collapse, so I let it sit, let it grow, turned $250,000 into $8 million. Just so one day I could look my monster in the eye and say, "You built your cage yourself." Richard was staring at me like he'd never met me before. Maybe he hadn't. The stranger, my son, the thing wearing my son's face, finally spoke, voice low, dangerous. You think you've won. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a flash drive, placed it on the table like a loaded gun. Everything you just said, I've known for 10 years. This, he tapped the drive, contains every email, every bank transfer, every late night phone call you made trying to cover your own tracks, including the $5,000 you paid Deputy Rollins to lose evidence, obstruction of justice, insurance fraud, conspiracy after the fact. You go to the police with your little story, Mom. We both go to prison. Only difference is, I walk out in 20, you die inside. The room went dead silent, then I smiled. For the first time in 20 years, I smiled like I meant it. Richard, I said, not taking my eyes off the monster, call the sheriff. Tell him to bring the FBI with him. And tell them to bring shovels. Because tomorrow morning, we're digging up Benjamin's grave. His face finally cracked. Real fear, real panic, because he just realized I wasn't bluffing and I had absolutely nothing left to lose. He lunged for the flash drive like a cornered animal. I was faster. 20 years of rage makes a woman quick. I snatched it, slipped it into my robe pocket, and stepped back. Touch me, I said, and I scream. This house is wired with cameras now. Front porch, living room, kitchen, even the damn mailbox. Everything you just said is already in the cloud. Time-stamped, backed up on 3 different servers. His hand froze halfway to my arm. Good. Richard finally stood up, voice shaking. Ellie, we need to call someone. Right now, no, I said. Not yet. I walked to the window, pulled the curtain all the way open. Sunlight poured in like Judgment Day. I wanted him to feel exposed. You know what I did every single Sunday for 20 years. Benjamin. I didn't wait for an answer. I sat in that cemetery and I prayed, not for your soul. I stopped believing you had won a long time ago. I prayed that if you were still breathing somewhere, God would give me 5 minutes alone with you. Just 5? He waited 20 years, but he finally answered. I turned around. He hadn't moved, face pale, mouth tight. You made one mistake. I continued, You thought grief makes a mother weak. It doesn't. It makes her patient. I reached into the same drawer and pulled out a third envelope, thicker, sealed with red wax, the way they did in old movies. I broke the seal in front of him. Inside, a single sheet of paper and a small plastic evidence bag. The paper was a handwritten confession, signed by Leonard Dorsey, dated 3 months ago, from a federal prison in Louisiana. I read it out loud, slowly. My name is Leonard Dorsey. In August 2005, I was paid $23,000 by Benjamin James Whitlock to stage his death and dispose of the body of Marcus Trey Reynolds, a homeless man I murdered in Atlanta. I have terminal cancer. I am making this statement of my own free will. There is no deal. I just don't want to meet God with this on my soul. I looked up. Leonard wrote this the week before he died. He mailed it to me with instructions to open it only if you ever came back. He said you'd come crawling the minute the money got big enough. He was right. The stranger, my son, the killer, finally lost it. You crazy old bitch. He took one step toward me. I didn't flinch. I just lifted the evidence bag so he could see what was inside. A single bullet casing, 9mm, found inside the truck wreckage, never logged into evidence. Deputy Rollins kept it as insurance. I bought it from him 10 years ago for $50,000, and engraved on the bottom, clear as day, B.J. W. Benjamin James Whitlock, his initials, his gun, his fingerprints still on file from a DUI when he was 19. I smiled again, small, deadly. Ballistics never ran it because the body was too burned. Funny how that works when the coroner's your cousin. But the FBI has new toys now. Cold Case Unit. They love unsolved murders with rich suspects. He backed up until his legs hit the couch, sat down hard. Richard was already on his phone whispering to someone, probably the sheriff. I kept going, voice calm, almost gentle. You're going to prison, Benjamin. Not for 20 years, for life. Georgia still has the death penalty for felony murder. And Marcus Reynolds had a mother too. I walked over, crouched down so we were eye to eye. Mother to son, grave to grave. I'm going to watch them strap you down. And when they ask if you have any last words, I want you to remember this moment. Remember your mother's face. Because it'll be the last thing you ever see. For the first time in 20 years, he looked like my little boy again, terrified, small, begging without words. I stood up, turned my back on him. Richard, I said, call them in. Tell them to bring handcuffs and a body bag. Just in case. Outside, I heard tires on gravel, multiple cars, sirens still off. They were being polite. The front door opened on its own, 2 deputies, then 2 more, then a man in a dark FBI windbreaker. They knew exactly who to grab. He didn't fight, just kept staring at me while they cuffed him, mouth moving like he wanted to say Mom, one last time. I didn't give him the satisfaction. As they dragged him past me, I leaned in and whispered the last words he'd ever hear from me. You should have stayed dead. They took him out in handcuffs at 12:47 p.m. I stood on the porch and watched the cars disappear down the long Oakline driveway. The air smelled like rain coming. I remember thinking, finally, the storm I've been living under for 20 years is about to break. Richard tried to make me sit down, get me water, call my sister. I told him to go home. This wasn't his burial anymore. I walked back inside, locked the door, and did something I hadn't done in 2 decades. I poured myself a bourbon, neat, 2 fingers. Then I opened the safe behind the portrait of my husband and took out the one thing I swore I'd never touch again. A second flash drive, black, no label, the real one, because the drive I let Benjamin see. That was the decoy. The one Leonard mailed me with his confession also contained a little insurance policy of his own. Every text, every wire transfer, every recorded call between Benjamin and Leonard for the last 18 months. Benjamin planning his grand return. Benjamin laughing about how the old lady will fold the minute she sees me. Benjamin bragging he still had the gun that killed Marcus Reynolds hidden in a storage unit outside Savannah. I'd known he was coming for 6 weeks. Leonard warned me in his very last letter. He's sick, Ellie. Sicker than I ever was. He'll come for the money the minute he hears I'm gone. So I let him come. I let him walk right into the trap I spent 15 years building. The FBI agent in charge, a woman named Special Agent Martinez, called me that same afternoon. Voice calm, professional, but I could hear the excitement. Underneath, Mrs. Whitlock, we executed the search warrant on the storage unit your late associate told us about. We found the 9mm. We found the clothes Marcus Reynolds was wearing the night he disappeared. And we found a notebook. Your son wrote every detail of the plan in his own handwriting. He even drew a little smiley face next to the part where he said, "Mom will cry so pretty at the fake funeral." I closed my eyes. Let the tears come this time, not for him, for Marcus, for the boy I buried who never had a mother standing over his grave. Agent Martinez kept talking. We're charging him with first-degree murder, conspiracy, fraud, desecration of a corpse. The list is long, and because he crossed state lines to commit the original crime, it's federal. Death penalty is on the table. The U.S. Attorney himself wants this one. I asked the only question that still mattered. Will I have to testify? She was quiet for a second. Ma'am, you're the entire case. Without you, we have a very smart sociopath who almost got away with it. With you, he never had a chance. I told her I'd be there. Front row, every single day. That night, I did something else I hadn't done in 20 years. I drove to the cemetery after dark, stood in front of the headstone that lied to the world. Benjamin James Whitlock, beloved son, 1981-2005. I opened the bottle of bourbon, poured a little on the ground. Then I spoke out loud for the first time since they took him away. You wanted to know why I never spent the insurance money, Benny? Because every penny of it was blood. Marcus's blood, and I decided a long time ago that the only way to make it clean was to use it to put you exactly where you belong. I reached into my coat and pulled out the court order the judge signed that morning. Exhumation. Tomorrow at dawn, they'd dig up the coffin, run the DNA one last time, close the file on Marcus Reynolds. Give his real mother the truth she deserved, and Benjamin's headstone, they'd jackhammer it into dust. No name, no dates, just an empty hole where a lie used to be. I took one last sip of bourbon, set the bottle on the grave, and walked away. Didn't look back, because some mothers raise their children, some mothers bury them, and some mothers, we do both. The trial lasted 9 days. 9 days of cameras outside the courthouse, reporters screaming questions, strangers on the internet calling me everything from saint to monster. I wore the same black dress every morning, same pearls my husband gave me on our 30th anniversary. I wanted him to see me exactly the way he remembered, the mother he tried to erase. He never won. 104 never looked at me once. Not during opening statements, not when they wheeled in the charred clothing of Marcus Reynolds, not even when Marcus's real mother took the stand, 78 years old, clutching a picture of her boy and sobbing so hard the bailiff had to hold her up. He just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, like if he didn't blink the nightmare would end. It didn't. Day 7, they played the storage unit tape. His own voice, recorded on Leonard's old burner phone, laughing while he cleaned the 9mm. She'll fold the second she sees me. Old ladies always do when you bring back their dead babies. The jury gasped. One woman put her hand over her mouth and started crying. I didn't. I'd heard it 100 times already. I just watched the color drain from his face when he finally realized the whole world now knew what he was. Closing arguments were short. The prosecutor, a young woman who couldn't have been older than 35, looked straight at the jury and said only 12 words. Some mothers protect their children. Eleanor Whitlock protected the rest of us from hers. They were out 4 hours. 4 hours and 11 minutes, to be exact, when the foreman stood up and said guilty. On all 23 counts, the courtroom didn't cheer, it just exhaled, like the state of Georgia had been holding its breath for 20 years and finally let go. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. Death. No possibility of parole. The judge, an old man with kind eyes and a voice like gravel, looked at me when he read it. Not at him, at me. He said, Mrs. Whitlock, The state of Georgia owes you a debt it can never repay. Because of your courage, a dangerous man will never walk free again, and a mother in Atlanta will finally get to bury her real son with his real name on the stone. Then he did something no one expected. He stepped down from the bench, walked over and shook my hand, told me my husband would be proud. I believed him. The last time I saw Benjamin alive was through the glass in the death row visiting room. He was in orange, cuffs chained to the table, hair gone gray at the temples overnight. He picked up the phone, voice small, "Mom, I'm sorry." I stared at him for a long time, long enough for the guard to shift uncomfortably. Then I said the only thing left to say, "You stopped being my son the night you put a bullet in another mother's child. Goodbye, Benjamin." I hung up, stood up, walked out without looking back. 6 months later, the appeal was denied. The governor refused to intervene. Marcus Reynolds finally got a proper funeral. I paid for the headstone myself, simple granite, just his name and the years he actually lived, and the $8 million. Every cent went to a foundation in Marcus's name. Scholarships for kids who lost parents to violence. Shelters for runaways so no one ever ends up disposable again. They still ask me in interviews if I ever think about him. If I miss my little boy, I tell them the truth. Every day for 20 years, I visited a grave and begged God to give me my son back. God answered. He gave me the truth instead, and the truth set me free. Some nights I still drive to the cemetery. But I don't go to the empty hole where the lie used to be. I go to Marcus's stone. I leave flowers. I sit for a while, and I tell him thank you, because some ghosts don't haunt you. Some ghosts save you. And some mothers, we don't just survive the unthinkable. We make sure it never happens to anyone else. This is Alina Whitlock, signing off.